All right, so the next step that we're going to take is to cross cut the short piece for the cell phone holder down here. That's the part that accepts the T-nut that the knob is going to screw into so that you can loosen and raise and lower and turn the holder. So that piece is going to come from this piece here. This just came off of the drill press where we had the holes drilled right here to accept the T-nut. And the reason we left this long, that was on purpose. That's for safety. I want to show you why we're not going to cut it here at the radial arm saw. This is one that I already cut. The final length is going to be 2¼ inches. And if we tried to use the stop block like we did before, first of all, it bottoms out somewhere in the 3½ range, so we wouldn't be able to use this one. But even if I added a separate stop block, my hand would be right in the danger zone as I'm going to cut each of those pieces, okay? So we're going to do a different way of cutting these pieces. We're going to do it over here at the table saw. So let's head over there. So what I have set up over here is a process that also uses a stop block, similar to the stop block over there at the radial arm. But the difference here is when we do it on the table saw, we have to account for the possibility of kickback. So first of all, in order to do this process, I did have to remove the guard, okay? But in place of the guard, we put the riving knife here, so that's going to help us prevent kickback. But what you'll notice is I have this piece of wood clamped to the fence here, okay? And the reason I have that there is when we use our miter gauge to make a crosscut, it's important that we don't use the miter gauge and the fence at the same time. And the reason for that is if I have my piece against the fence here, and I have this piece against the fence here, when I finish this cut, just grab this piece here, if I have my fence right against the end of the board here, when the piece gets separated from the other piece here, it's going to be trapped between the blade and the fence. And just about every piece is going to kick back, okay? So in order to account for that, I added a stop block. Now, you'll notice that I have it clamped back here, not up here, because if I have it up here, we're going to run into the same problem. So the way this was set up, I'm going to take the clamps off here, was first I clamped this, and I'll just do it now. First I clamped this to the fence up over where the blade is, like so, okay? And now, instead of using the marker on the fence, because now that's not going to be accurate, I'm going to use my tape measure. And I'm going to measure from the edge of the wood to the inside tooth of the blade, and I'm going to measure to 2¼ inches. That's how long the piece needs to be. So I'm going to just dial that in and get it right to my 2¼ inches. And then I lock the fence down, all right? Now that that's locked down, just to illustrate my point here, if I were to cut a piece like this, as soon as the piece separates, we now have that piece pinched between the two spots. It's going to shoot back like a bullet, right? So now what I'm going to do is loosen the clamps. The fence stays locked. We're going to move this back to here. Clamp it down, and I'm just using 2 clamps instead of 1, just to make sure it doesn't move on us in any way. Just kind of added support there. Okay, so now when I bump this against here, it's still going to be registered at 2¼ And then when I get to my cut, as long as I'm holding it tight, it's going to cut it accurately at 2¼ every single time. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. Let me put my safety glasses on if I can find them. Oh, here they are. Okay. All right. So go. So we're going to turn the roll on. I'm against the stop block. I'm against the miter gauge. Okay, so now the piece just floats there, right? And while I'm mass producing these and cutting a whole bunch of them, I can just put each piece and cut one after another, and the next one's just going to push it further and further until it goes past the blade. All right? One other thing to point out before I start cutting these is before cutting, I took a triangle to make sure that the miter gauge is 90 degrees to the blade. That way we're getting square 90-degree cuts. Okay? So I'm going to get started cutting here, and you'll see that in the time lapse.